Hello, hello, hello. How you doing, Josh?
I'm good. What's up with you?
I'm good. Hey, to
You
all
got a
those
meeting?
out there, huh?
You got a meeting or something? I see your suit on.
No, just a jacket. I went out this morning to do something. I had to wake up like real early today, man.
Uh,
I'm tired, but as it is, we got to keep consistent and we got to do what we got to do. Yeah. But I see you just chilling over there in Arizona this morning,
Always, man.
huh?
Always. That, that's how it should be.
Yeah, yeah. This
So
life
what's
is
on tap
short.
for today?
Well, we're gonna be trying to talk about accountability, transparency, um, government reporting, the kind of data we should be looking at, and then the Freedom of Information Act, how we can participate in those kind of requests and everything like that. So I know you followed all the stuff with the U.S. government, how they have been on our government back. And
Hmm.
it's not strange because I have always been talking about transparency and accountability. But what do you think is the state of transparency today? From where we were, let's say this with the Second Republic, from 2006, you know, to 2017, and then with this new government now,
Well,
what do you think
I
is the
mean,
state of transparency?
it's always been one of those situations where I'm not sure that the government of Liberia has ever appreciated what needs to happen for transparency to happen. My initial involvement in uh, transparency and in government systems was when I worked for USIA. At the time, the U.S. government had just put in place what's called the Paperwork Reduction Act
Right.
that said that any processes that could be made electronic
Should be made
should
electronic.
should be made electronic.
Right.
And one of the things that I came to understand because I was the technical lead for that project at the USIA as a contractor. And one of the things I came to understand is that every law, every process that is put in place in the US government, they gather metrics on it.
They have
And,
to.
be, and because they gather metrics on it, they can then affix a cost to it. Once you can affix a cost to something, you have to budget for it.
Right.
Okay. That means, let's say you say a citizen who fills out a FOIA request, the FOIA request is going to take them 10 minutes to fill out.
Right.
Okay.
So,
But
so break down for you for our listening audience, just so they can
it's the
understand.
Freedom of Information Act,
Right.
where the citizens have a right to request information from the government
Right.
on specific topics.
Right.
Okay. And one of the things that uh, I also learned is that, for example, the federal government cannot say to the states, you must do this without providing money for them to do it,
True.
because then it becomes what's called an unfunded mandate. States don't have money to just do anything the government says.
Right.
But if the government insists, as a part of federal law, that a state has to perform a certain action, then that government has to make money available.
Yep.
And in order to make that money available, they
Got to
must
look
have
at that.
gathered metrics on this is what it's going to take. So the thing that struck me about the whole FOIA process in Liberia is that there was no cost analysis. What is it going to cost an agency to do FOIA? Because if we go back, you had submitted a FOIA request to the federal to the government of Liberia, and I believe it was to NoCal,
Yep.
and they insisted that you pay for the documents.
But it was an unreasonable rate they charged me. They charged
But
me $4
but
for
that
one
didn't
page.
even matter.
No, but in normal situation, yes, you do pay. Even the U.S. government, sometimes you do have to pay if they have to go the extra mile to provide you that information.
Okay, but here's the thing.
Yeah.
At least I'm of this position. If the government maintains that something is a right, then there should not be a cost for the citizens to exercise that right. Because to put a cost on the exercise of that right then says that only certain citizens are going to be able to avail themselves of that right.
I'm in agreement with that principle. I'm in total agreement with that.
So again, if it's a part of the budgeting process, and it should have been a part of the budgeting process for NoCal. Okay, considering the voluminous amount of documents that NoCal handles. So if somebody comes and says, I want you to provide me with all the information on the last 5 bids you got for XYZ. Well, NoCal should have then said, we're going to set aside certain amount of money for FOIA. And but we're just using NoCal. So my point is, across the entire government, there's no infrastructure, financial or technical, as to how the government responds to these requests uniformly.
Oh, well, question there's not. So, I mean, to just buttress your point, in section 3.11 of the Freedom of Information Act for Liberia, it says, provision of requested information, the search for and the provision of requested information shall be done free of charge to the requester. But a public entity may charge such amount as is necessary to cover the actual cost of photocopying, transcribing, scanning, or other forms of reproduction. So
okay, so again, when they say it will be done free of charge to the person, but there's an actual cost to the government to do it.
Right.
And if you're not budgeting for that, then you're unable to perform that function that should be given free of charge.
Well, to a large extent, they do have staff for that, right? Because there's...
I don't know. I don't believe they do. Does every agency... Okay, so let me ask you this.
Yes,
does every government agency have a FOIA
you can call
representative?
It yes.
They have one.
It should be official. In each ministry, there should be an information officer. In each agency, in each commission.
Information officer is different from Freedom of Information officer.
That's what I mean. Under the Freedom of Information Act, they should have somebody designated as their
the FOIA officer.
As the FOIA officer. Right.
Right. So then if they have that person, then we need to understand that they're all functioning under the same uniform process.
They should be, but they don't. So, like you said, I've actually filed 3 Freedom of Information Acts. The first one was to NoCal. NoCal basically told me they had to charge me $4 to make 1 photocopy, and based on my search, I needed 5,000 and I think 800 documents. So it was like 24,000 US dollars they were charging me for just to photocopy those documents. When they actually had those documents electronically as well, they were provided me that free of charge, but they refused to do that. And our own schoolmate out here was the legal counsel at the time, and she put that bogus response there to me.
So that would go ahead.
Go ahead.
That would tell me that we need to strengthen that FOIA law and say where those documents are available electronically, then those other agencies, and I think it's fair for us to assume that people are no longer putting documents in filing cabinets anymore.
Well, I want to assume that for government Liberia.
For me, okay, so if you're not doing it, then you need to be doing it. Just as a part of record keeping and accountability.
Oh, I'm in agreement with you. I mean, that's the
Okay,
fastest route to storing data and to be able to
and
retrieve that
documents.
information. Yes,
Right.
everything.
So now, in terms of asking, but then again, there's a whole record keeping infrastructure, electronic record keeping infrastructure that
Right.
needs to be created and managed,
And
and therein lies a whole new problem. So
it comes back to the same discussion
we
we had the
still
other
come
day
back to the
about
same
data.
discussion.
Data, the structure of data, the interoperability of data, all of those
Exactly.
things will come back to that.
And if it's managed, if it's so I'll give you an example. When I was in Liberia in 2011, I believe, I was in the office of the foreign minister, and they had something to send to another ministry. And the way they sent it was essentially they put it in an envelope and gave it to the messenger to send.
Yep.
Okay. And it was unsealed, meaning
he could look at it, he could photocopy, he could do anything with it.
Correct.
He could even change it if he was smart.
And so what I said was, there's no document security.
Nope.
Because once this guy walks out of here, the document that is in his custody, he is the only person that's in charge. Because I don't know if Liberians understand this before. Even in Liberia, they used to have it. When they put a document in an envelope, they would put something like, I don't know what the word to call it, like jelly or
the seal. The seal.
Yes. They will put a seal on it where they would stamp the seal. And if that envelope is open and the seal is broken, it would tell them that it had been tampered with.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Again, it comes back to access control, right? That's why when all these things are kind of related. When you talk about cybersecurity, or you just talk about just basic information structuring. Who has a need to know? Who needs that information for the job? Who needs it just so they can be aware? What level or what extent of that information? But in our place, that's why we see a lot of leaks with everything, because everything is exposed like that. The chain of custody is not consistent, is not maintained, and we have those problems. So it just goes back to setting up a structure and having a system. When we don't have systems, nearly everything breaks down.
Right.
So the second case was public works. You remember when they had that whole thing about the $100 million and they gave them authorization to proceed and stuff like that?
Right.
Meanwhile, come and gave some kind of bogus statement. So I did a freedom request to them, and they said send it to our website. Not knowing when you send it to the website, it goes to another ministry, because the guy who built the website did not change the contact information because he duplicated for some other.
He duplicated it, right?
Yeah, so he didn't change some of those little things that you need to change when you create a website, where you kind of replicating it across, different customers for efficiency or whatever. But I corrected that. I sent it to them directly. They still never responded. He ignored me. The third one was with, so that was Judy Moore at Public Works, that was NoCal, and then Bian Kessler at Maritime. Bian was the only one who responded to me. We did have some heated exchanges, even though that's my very good friend, but we're back and forth on it. But eventually his agency did produce the report, and it was, what I expected from them. So there is this issue of impunity also, where even reporters today in Liberia say when they put in their freedom of information request, they don't provide the information to them. Then they also sometimes hide behind national security, because that's what NOCA did with some of the specific financial reports I wanted. They claim it had national security implications. So you're right. We need to strengthen this Freedom of Information Act so that people can actually be a participant in the transparency process. We need to require that people have these reports and information available on their websites. I think the central bank is probably the only institution that really provides detailed information, on its website consistently that you can go back to, even quarterly reports, monthly reports, and other stuff like that. The Ministry of Finance is trying, but did not transparent in a way with expenditures and revenue and all of those things. So all of these things have to be factored in into some lawmaker, taking on that responsibility to say, I would champion information.
And the other thing is, even with the FOIA request, there doesn't seem to be any accountability for how many requests a specific agency received, how, what did they respond to? What was the length of time they took to respond? Stuff like that would go to, say, an office of the Inspector General, where they have to submit a report to them every quarter and say, this is what we're doing. This is how our budget is being accounted for.
George, it's in the law, but they don't do it. It's just the level of impunity and lack of accountability.
Well, then you have to look at the Office of the Inspector General. These Inspectors General have to write their reports every quarter, every 6 months, and say, this is what we are not doing. This is what we need to improve.
Yeah, but George, for some reason, when they go through these process audits, they don't go after the implementation of the response to whatever they write up the agency for. Look, Section 5.3 says annual reports. All public bodies and private entities to which this act applies shall submit to the Independent Information Commissioner. And I don't know who that is in the Republic of Liberia. Or
exactly.
Report concerning activities carried out during the preceding year in relation to this act. The annual report shall be submitted at a time to be determined by the Independent Information Commissioner and shall include just what you said, the number of requests for access to documents or records or other type of information received by the public authority or private body, as the case may be, between January 1 and December 31st of the preceding year. The number of requests and access to information pending before the public authority or private body, as the case may be, as of December 31st. So they want to know what you received, what you processed, what's pending. And people don't get that. We don't get that information from our government, from our people in power. And there are several other things. They even want to know the number of days it takes for the public authority or private body to process different types of requests. So all these things are in our laws. But yet and still, our leaders, our officials, they don't respond to these things, they don't respect them.
Well, and I think it comes from the fact that a lot of them really don't understand how these processes are supposed to work. So there may be there may be some degree of malfeasance where they just don't want to respond.
Right.
There may be others where people, who have never been through this process before are now saddled with it, and they don't even know how to respond.
I think that's the case in the majority, of the situations, but I just don't want to give them an excuse. Because as a leader, if you appoint these people, you got to understand that they have the competency to execute. But that is never ever validated.
So here's my question. Let's take the people who are the information commissioner. How many workshops has this person had?
Let's know who the person is first. That's something I'm
exactly. So we can't ask the line employees to carry out a function that we don't know they were trained, if they were trained for it.
But oh my God, you are opening a can of worms here. Because that's the case, they don't got to go across government and look at these square pegs in round holes that don't fit the position. They don't understand the functionality of that position. They don't even understand the mandate of the institution or the specific job function that they have. I've been asking, are there job descriptions for every job in government? I doubt it. I doubt it seriously. Uh-oh. You're on mute, Josh. I don't know what happened. And I can't unmute you. You gotta mute yourself. Oh, he's probably speaking to somebody. So I think, when it comes to this information, we have to find a way to provide people information. And then there's this whole issue of people not understanding what information you give them, right? Nearly 85 to 90% of our people are not educated, they're not literate. So you putting a report on a website doesn't do anything for most of the people. And that's why a lot of times these lawmakers supposedly they're supposed to be making reports to the people they work for, but you don't find them making those reports. You don't find them putting it together to inform the people what have you achieved in your three primary functions. What laws have you proposed?
And again, that's something that if we had process could be standardized, right?
Definitely.
Every quarter, you send out a survey to the legislators, okay, and let them fill out and return that survey. But here's the problem. The problem again is that we don't have these overarching systems. And as long as those systems are unavailable, then we don't have the ability to standardize. And I don't, it has always confounded me that it just seems as if Liberians don't understand the value of standardization. Okay? So let me just kind of throw this out there so maybe people who live here can understand. We're building a house right now. And, I think we bought our first house in Arizona in 1998 or something like that. But one of the things you quickly learn is that everything in your house is built to a certain standard. The doors, when you go to buy a door from Home Depot, they're built to certain measurements. Exterior doors are different from interior doors in terms of how they have to be constructed. Now, people think that imposes complexity, but it does just the opposite. Because what it does is, it means there's a company out there that does nothing but build exterior doors. I can't hear you, Isaac.
Yeah, with that specialization that you're talking about, you allow people to be able to have repeatable processes that they can structure, and the production is much easier.
Correct.
What George is talking about here too is something called International Standards Organization, ISO. ISO has standards for everything that everybody under the ISO governance apply themselves to, whether it's technology, whether it's building, whether it's anything else, all these different male and female things, your electrical outlets, all of these things are standardized things. And if we can't build standards, we can't get standards. Most times you have nothing. You have a deterioration of any system you want to build and apply.
Because right now in Liberia, every home is a custom home.
Basically.
Every home in Liberia is a custom home because we don't have those standards. So, the door at your house may be so wide, the door at the next house might be so wide, but each of those doors is constructed by your carpenter to your specifications.
Right.
Okay, now let's think about it. Desks for schools. If we standardized, one of the things that had crossed my mind a while back, we had this thing called the Liberian Industrial Free Zone.
Right, lives that.
Okay, so the carpenters, and we have very good craftsmen in Liberia.
We got creative craftsmen, we got full finishers.
Exceptional craftsmen, okay? But what they don't have are the tools, okay? So let's say the government decides that they're going to buy 200,000 desks. And they're going to give a contract to the Carpenters Association. And the carpenters, but the government will say purchase the equipment, the routers and things like that, for them to produce these things. And so now you already have a group of craftsmen who have a skill set, and the only thing the government is doing is providing these routers, and and then the carpenters are now renting time to use the routers.
I think we discussed this like how many years ago? 20
Exactly. So now, as a small carpenter, maybe I can produce 2,500 desks. But if I can go to the government and say, okay, I need to use the router for a week, I can schedule that time, have my guys come in, cut the equipment, and bring it back to my shop so I can assemble it.
Simple.
Okay? Because we're operating on standards.
Yes.
The carpenters themselves don't even have to program the routers. You can have some technicians there that say, okay, you're building desks for elementary school. This is the elementary school desk plan.
Right.
Put the wood on there. It will cut it for you. You pick up all. And so now the carpenters are simply doing the assembly. All right. It creates an efficiency that we can scale up.
So how do we get to that point? That deficit is there. Is it like government creating that enabling environment, or is it people who may be entrepreneurs try to, because some standards organizations are nonprofit organizations here.
We get to that point by our people understanding that and accepting that the first steps will be difficult, because we have to change the minds of the people. Okay? The first steps will be difficult. The first steps will be slow. But once the thing starts to move and it picks up momentum,
right?
Listen, I hate to drag Sam Jackson into this conversation, but I remember when he was talking about all this stuff about electricity and all of that. And I told him, I said, listen, these are the things we need to do to ensure that LEC is profitable.
Sam just won't shortcut.
But his position was, well, we can do that later. No. We got to understand that if we do these things first, that's the basic solution to the problem. And I think getting the citizenry to buy in, and I'm going to make a lot of people angry here now. Because
no cussing.
No, I won't cuss anybody today. But here's the thing. I am sick and tired when it comes to Liberia of these political science people trying to have an opinion about technical processes that they don't understand.
Right.
You can't just go and read a book about something and say, oh, now I know how it works, when you've never actually done it before.
Nothing practical, just do it. It doesn't work. Even some people within the discipline who have not actually done
that specific thing.
Yes.
They don't know how it's done.
No, they don't.
So,
they don't have an idea.
This is one of the, I think, largest problems that we have in Liberia, that we have the people who have technical skill that they can build on, and then we have these political science people who believe that they must opine on every single thing, even things that they aren't qualified to opine on. And then they sit down and they write these volumes of nonsense. And I just don't have the patience to deal with it. But I think it really holds our people back, because these are the people who end up in the Hatai shop and holding these long discourses that don't lead to anything. And so you see, we have this struggle where we're trying to put this country on a technical footing. And we have another group of people who believe that even though they don't have any technical expertise, they should be the arbiters of what is being done.
And you told me about the Dunning-Kruger effect, right? That's
Right.
part of it. Where people have this cognitive bias that they can do things that they can't do because they probably were in the same building with somebody who did it, you know. Though, but so in terms of moving our country towards greater level of transparency and accountability, how do people advocate for this thing, for it to happen?
Look, Liberians are the only group of people in the world who believe that the private sector should be leading efforts that are the charge of the government.
I mean, again, I believe it's because a lot of people don't know, they don't understand how government even supposed to work.
My position on that is, in order for government to work, government has to work.
Yes.
That's my position. Okay, in order for government to work, government has to work. It has to do the things that government has to do. Listen, I don't think our people are necessarily anti-government.
No, but I think our people are naturally recalcitrant, though. They don't respond to order. They don't respond to rules.
Because those things are not enforced uniformly.
That one, I can agree.
Okay.
I can agree.
When I first came to America, I will never forget. We went to a movie theater in Atlanta at the Omni to see the $2 movie. And it was like 15 minutes before the movie, and the line was long.
Don't embarrass yourself at that, Joy.
I told the guys, I said, we ain't gonna never make it. They said, no, we're gonna get in. Don't worry about it. We're gonna get in. And the line was long, and I didn't want to, I didn't want to come out across like this primitive African, right? So I stood in the line. But guess what? It took us no more than 8 minutes to buy our tickets, get our seats, and get admission into the theater.
Wow.
And then I thought back to trying to buy tickets at Relda, where people are jumping. Oh, my man, yeah, my money, give him my ticket, yeah, my man.
I didn't know they did that to Relda too. I know I did it a couple of times at Roxy Cinema and Gabriel Cinema.
Longer. And that's because we don't impose rules that people need to follow.
I mean, even getting on a simple bus. I mean, just everything we rush for. I mean, so it's a mindset change. It's something
and the government has to lead that change through uniformity of process, uniformity of action, uniformity of response. It has to be the same everywhere you go, because at some point, then the citizens are conditioned that this is how it's supposed to work.
Yeah, I mean, look, if let's say I'm eating something and I lose my consciousness and throw it out the window, I'm looking around me to see if some cop can pull me over for littering.
Exactly.
Because I'm conditioned to know I'm not supposed to throw trash around in this place. That's why you got garbage. That's why you can hold it. You can throw it out later.
And then you find that the other citizens now become kind of the moral compass.
Right. The moral police for each other.
No, we don't do it that way.
Yes. But that's why you have to teach the influencers or the leaders in those different communities some kind of way. Government has to reach to those people, because it takes people to educate people. That's why they always say each one teach one, or whatever those cliche phrases, they mean something.
They mean something.
They do apply. But for some reason, it seems like nothing works for us. So we have to find a way to change how we go into this process of elevating the mindset of our people, teaching civic responsibility, making sure that people take pride in the environment, in their own personal situation, take ownership of where they want to go, what direction they want to go. So, hopefully we will get there. But one thing I do want to say is that, we try to stick to time contract here. We'll always stick with the 1 hour time frame, just so people can, because span of attention sometimes is limited. And if we don't try to keep people attention, we will lose it. So when it comes to accountability and transparency, how does the public, again, it comes, I guess, to education, how does the public get to feel included in the process of governance? Because that is a right, whether it's from information, whether it's from access to information, whether it's government, providing certain things for them. Those are rights that our people have. But those rights, sometimes they don't demand it, they don't exercise it, and it's just a loose situation in the country.
Well, I think it always starts with the government. It's what the government creates as a standard in terms of this is what we're going to provide to the public,
right?
Just as general information. Okay, so listen. So you talked earlier, Isaac, about like you take the government for example. Every government agency has its own contract for website services.
Yes, communication is separate.
But you have platforms that allow, for example, if you go to the government of Rwanda website, it's uniformed. They use the same platform. I think they use Drupal or something like that.
Okay.
But it's the same platform. So they have their infrastructure architects who design it, and then every ministry just plugs in whatever they're supposed to plug in. So if you go from one ministry to the other, it's not like you have to understand how do we get this service? How do I find something on this page? It's the same for every ministry. One of the things that was disturbing, for example, was during the Ebola crisis.
Mm-hmm.
The person who had the contract for the Ministry of Health's website, the website went down. And the reason it went down is that they exhausted the amount of bandwidth usage they had for every month during that crisis. And so they couldn't redo it until the next month. And that was a consistent problem going forward. So I'm saying even all the government websites should be under the Ministry of Information. At least the architecture. And then within each ministry, there would be a team that's responsible for the content for that ministry.
Right.
Okay? That way, you take away 40 different agencies having 40 different designs.
And that's where we talk about having even a technology czar can set those standards for some of the superficial things like you're talking about.
What we need to be able to do is we need to be able to understand what are those functions that span multiple agencies that need to be centrally managed.
Yes, we need a shared service center.
Shared services center. That's what we need. So every agency needs a web presence. You need shared services for web presence. Okay. Every agency needs record management. So, for example, the other day, I think you asked me about a case management system.
Right.
Okay. Again, they don't have the expertise. Somebody had approached, I think you were involved. Somebody had approached us about something for a court but they only wanted to do it for one court.
Yes.
And I'm like, that's not how it's supposed to work.
No, it shouldn't work that way.
Okay.
Where is your scalability? How do you set standards? Why would
And again, I always have a problem to pick with the donor community, because it doesn't seem as if the donor community comes to Liberia and says, we want to help you do this, but let's first figure out what you don't have before we give you money to do the thing we want to help you do.
Or what we gave you money for before that you haven't done, that you want money for again to come do.
Right. So if you're giving money for a record management, a case management system in a court, you got to first understand what's the infrastructure that's there. What is it going to take to build this? What is it going to take to replicate it?
Yep.
You see what I'm saying? How are lawyers going to be impacted by it? There are no quick hits in these kind of systems. There just aren't.
There's not. And anytime some kind of legislation is passed here, the same thing. All the pros and cons, the costs, the benefits, the negatives, all of them are assessed. But we don't look at long-range assessment of the impact of some of the laws we pass and what it will have on people. And those are some of the things that set us back. If we're cognizant of all those things and consistently focus on them in terms of being systematic in our approach to all these things, have always these lists of questions of what could go wrong, what could happen 10 years down the road, X, Y, Z, a lot of things will be better. But you remember, you said in the beginning, the work is hard. Most people don't want to do the heavy lifting. They don't want to do the work. And that's what holds our country back. Some people have the skill, some people don't have the skill. But a lot of people don't want to do the necessary work to move this country forward. So we got one or two comments. I know there was somebody who had asked earlier, I saw, relating to basically decentralization. They said, George Famulere, could you discuss the effect of the unitary state, the absence of political and economic independence at the county level on transparency in Liberia? And I think that's a whole separate topic that has to do with decentralization. I think we touched on it before. I'm not sure.
Well, let me just try to put a framework out here, and they can give us some thought, and we can visit it again. Okay. And one of the things I think we can all agree on is that the current county structure doesn't work.
Right. Oh, they talk about it. Yep.
Okay. We have to accept that. The current political divisions do not work. And the reason they don't work is you got some counties that just will never be able to support themselves financially.
Especially with the population, with the resources.
With their population and their resources. Okay, they just can't. Okay, you take people like Grand Cru, you take people like River Cess or River G, these are tiny places with 70,000 people population. So, if you look at the 70,000 people population and you look at the number, just the population distribution from an age group of people, maybe of that 70,000 people, you only got 14 or 15,000 of them who are actual adults who are capable of being productive.
Yeah, but some of those places, though, if the resources were not being exploited at the rate it is.
Okay,
like
so
River Cess, the gold in River Cess.
Okay, so
here's the thing. In River Cess.
Here's the thing.
They could build an economy, a strong economy.
But here's the thing. Then they have to develop their own county government and do all of that. They're not big enough for that type of stuff.
Well, they have a county government, George. That's why things don't work. There's the superintendent. There's the superintendent.
But the superintendent is not a part of the superintendent is beholden to Monrovia. So again,
I understand what you're saying, but then it comes down again to actual decentralization of not only administrative structure,
decentralization
structure that can impact the people.
That the county government and governors are financially independent from the central government.
They don't. They gotta go to Monrovia for everything.
So if that is not what decentralization means to anybody else, then we're not talking about the same thing.
But because people want to control things, they will always say we gotta do it small.
Right.
So I
So,
don't
so
see no way
here's my thing. The easiest way to do it. The easiest way to do it is split the country up into 3 provinces. Keep all of the
representatives and senators, right?
In their districts. Okay, you don't have to change the representation. Keep the districts. Okay, but divide it into 3 political and economic subdivisions.
Right.
Okay, so now you have lumber that's being cut in Grand Jide. But that same lumber has to now come to Sino. Okay, it can be processed there or it can be put on the boat to be shipped out. But the revenue from that lumber, the processing, the shipping is going directly to that southeastern county or that southeastern subdivision.
There's a facsimile of that going on in some of the counties where they have like some forest committee or something or tree committee that every log passing through, they got to pay 25 cents. But again, accountability and transparency, the people
but
in the
that
counties,
25 cents still goes to Monrovia.
No. It's supposed to stay in the county. They collect it at the county before the truck goes out.
So
But
they're collecting cash. So you're not going to see that money.
They don't see the money.
You see what I'm saying?
Anytime there's that frictional thing with cash.
So I think we need to wrap our head around the fact that the number of subdivisions in the organization don't lend themselves to economic decentralization.
True. Yeah.
Okay. So you take the western counties like Lofa, Bomi, Kipmount. Okay. That group of counties, they produce certain things and they are essentially an economic zone. You can have a superintendent of those counties. You can have mayors of the cities. Okay. People who can set property taxes for those counties, for those areas. So it's something we have to think about. But kind of, I just told somebody today, there's this futurist called Alvin Toffler. And what Toffler says is the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but there will be those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn.
Yes.
Okay. And I think that's where we are now with Liberia. We have refused to unlearn the things that our parents did. It's always been that way. So let's just keep it.
That's what's really amazing to me about this particular.
And the changes that we want are really not that radical.
No.
Because if you talk about decentralization and you say, well, guess what? You still keep the legislative districts.
Yeah.
You still so right now I think we have how many senators total? 30?
Yeah, we got 30 senators.
We got 30 senators. If you break the country up into 3, each political subdivision will have 10 senators. Okay? They can then even decide how they will structure the vote for the senators. So that every portion of their county has so you can keep all of that political representation in place.
But the key is the economics.
The key is the economic zones that will empower that group of people to say, you know what, this is what we want, and the money that we're getting from this, it will power the Grand Jide, it will pay for the Grand Jide Technical College. We don't need money from Monrovia. It will pay for the Lofa Agricultural Institute because we're getting the money from our coffee and we're using that money for ourselves.
Yes.
Okay.
But unfortunately, we don't use the money we get for those things for the right causes.
But the government in Monrovia now, because our previous experience with bung mines, with Nimba, with all of those places that were the economic engine of Liberia for decades. All of that money was repatriated to Monrovia, and those places never saw any development. Because if you look at the amount of revenue that a place like Nimba brought in,
Right. They should
you
be
would
way
say
more developed than where they
that
are.
Nimba County should be the most developed county in Liberia.
Yes.
Okay? So,
Even Bapolu back in the day with the diamond capital we swap.
exactly. So now what we're seeing is that model did not work from 50 years ago.
And it will not work today.
I have no reason to believe that model will continue to work
It's
today.
extracted. So we have another comment here, George. There's this young guy named Emmanuel Cooper who was supposedly missing and then was found dead.
But now they say he's at JFK.
Now they say he's at JFK. I just got this from Emmanuel Somanye.
So maybe it's a resurrection.
Yeah, right. He wasn't Jesus Christ. But this really calls into question sometimes the rush to be the one to deliver first news and stuff for many of our people. And I don't know whether it's the dog wagging the tail, the tail wagging the dog, whether it's social media that's really pushing people to get to this point, or just people who are ignorant. If you don't see a dead body and stuff, you would post that.
One of the things, again, we don't have the ability to report information to the authorities. We just don't. So there's this huge disconnect. You see what I'm saying?
I see the disconnect, but I still hold people responsible because these things are emotional. We are in times where there have been actual
people have a lack of confidence in this. They have a concern for the security.
Right. Everybody does, especially based on what the president said.
And until the government can put in place a uniformed communication system, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, we have thought that after Ebola, we have had that.
Right.
COVID comes, we still don't have it.
Because even here in America, when you file a missing persons report, right? The morgues, all of those places,
they got checkpoints to establish where the person
is this the person? We got a missing person here. We got an unidentified body here. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So all of these things, they happen in America. Don't get me wrong. But there is not a phone I can pick up and reach somebody who works for the government. You see what I'm saying? And say, hey, Emmanuel Cooper has not come home for 3 days and I need to file a missing person report. If Emmanuel Cooper has not come home for 3 days, my assumption is he's dead.
Most likely.
You understand what I'm saying? Because there's no process for the government to handle that information. So even if I called and I knew a number to call, how do I know that information is being worked on by the government? Where was he last seen? Emmanuel Cooper, let's roll back to the police, right? Almost everybody in the Monrovia area has a cell phone.
Nearly.
Okay? So let's say the police set up a missing persons task force. Every cell phone has geolocation on it. Right? So if I come in and say, you know what, Emmanuel Cooper's missing, I haven't heard from him for 3 days, send that to the police task force and they can do geolocation study on it and say, you know what, his cell phone was last seen in this place and it was last on at this time.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go and look there. There has to be a process.
And people have to be informed about those processes. They have to be transparent.
That would give people confidence. Okay, because at least they will say, we told them. But the government will be able to tell you, you know what? He's in the last time we got from his phone, he was actually in Jogwentown. And he made a phone call or sent a text message 2 hours ago.
Right.
So now we know that he's not actually missing. Maybe he's just hiding out with his girlfriend.
we got 3 minutes. Somebody want to know. I don't remember you using profanity on this show, but somebody asking, George, why you like using profanity? But just in general.
In general, the research shows that people who use profanity are smarter than people who don't.
Jesus Christ, but man, you have built a level of credibility. Don't let my people start.
No, I'm serious. I have research to show that.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, I would love to see that.
I have research to show that. No, put it this way.
To be very
I like to speak freely. And so, a lot of times we're not in a situation. Put it this way. If I'm giving an address to a group of people that's planned, and I have the time to prepare that address, that's fine. You will not find me cursing at that meeting. But if we having just a general discussion, I don't necessarily use profanity, but I don't hesitate to tell somebody that they're stupid.
Okay. So,
okay.
So the next person says, the show can be shared to a group. We'll try to look at the settings on the show and try to amend that. Then Richard says, Rwanda is doing really well. He learned that you can submit your building plan online and get a response after 28 days. Mm-hmm. They got systems.
Rwanda has systems. Big systems.
They can do a lot of things, and they demand that their system work. Oh, I don't know who the person appears as Facebook user to me. I can't see the name, but it says they asked Torba before to host the site on AWS, but got no response. Who's Torba? Because when Torba was around, the Torba we know.
This must be somebody who was in government.
Yeah, but
again,
having some web services were not around back then.
Yeah, but I'm talking about, so it must have been somebody like a Richard Tolbert or somebody like that at the National Investment Commission. But again, the problem that I have with that is that shouldn't be something an individual is doing. You see what I'm saying?
Maybe the guy has a company or he was in the government and felt that's what the government should do. So
right.
It should be systemic.
But it would be better if the entire government decided that we're going to host our services on AWS.
Right.
Across the board. Okay, because one of the things it does is you have to be able to protect that government information. Okay, you have to know who has access to it. You have to have control over the content that's put on there.
And he said he was going to design it,
right,
deploy it using Django from Python.
That's fine. But again, it needs, for me, it has to be universal. It can't be one person doing this for this organization.
And there's so much economies of scale,
right?
So much increased efficiency, so much standardization across sectors where people learn it and they're more flexible.
And even increase in opportunities.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. You can go from
people that you can hire. Because if you say that this is the government platform, now you can go to a Stella Morris and say, listen, we need you to train people to know how to do this. And when those people get out, they're immediately hireable because they have this particular skill.
Also, he actually died. They say the LMP clarifies the information on accidental death. The Liberian National Police informed the public that there was a tragic motorcycle accident along the Tottenham Boulevard, 15th Street Single opposite Naresh Brothers store on the 25th of April 20 involving two motorcyclists. As a result of the accident, the two motorcyclists sustained multiple injuries and were immediately rushed to the John F. Kennedy Hospital, where an unidentified male motorist was pronounced dead by, a medical. It ends there. But essentially what he's saying is, this guy was probably involved in a motorcycle accident. But again, it comes back to people reporting the right thing. So
unidentified.
Yes.
You understand?
So we who share that information, we have to go back now and tell people this is what the government is saying. All right. The guy said gold in Grand Cru is explored by Chinese and Ghanaians to the advantage of the big hands in government. I can't dispute that because it's happening in River Cess. It's happening in River Cess. The gold is being exploited by Ghanaians and Chinese. I went to a couple of different gold mines in Riverside where they had the kind of license that they're not supposed to be using heavy machines, but yes, they were using heavy machines. So our country not protected. You know, the people do what they want to do, and our government cannot protect us from these extorters because they themselves they either
They
have
are part and
ownership.
parcel. They're party to these things.
Yes, they are. They are.
Okay. And let's roll it back. When we talk about decentralization, then you would have a situation where the people who are making decisions about these concessions are not the people in Monrovia.
Right. Decentralization means that you are in power to have this negotiation for your own resources
and the benefits of your people.
Yes.
So again, as long as you leave it to Monrovia, the people in Monrovia really don't care.
No.
They just want to know how much of a cut am I going to get. I don't care what you do. Oh yes, the agreement say you're going to need 25 inspectors. Well, guess what? You know what? Take 5 inspectors and send me the check for the other 20. Right. And we're good.
So, folks, we have exhausted our hour. We're able to discuss accountability and transparency in government. We're able to
Freedom of
discuss
information,
how data relates to that, the Freedom of Information Act, and just what people need, the mindset we need to have to be able to incorporate some of these things in our governance, setting standards, establishing systems, and all of that. So, you know, Joa, I disagree with you. The Chinese really need to go. They're exploiting this country big time. But we appreciate the audience being with us. I mean, it's not easy to listen to somebody for 1 hour, but we appreciate you. Next week, we'll be coming back, and hopefully we'll be able to really delve into the whole decentralization thing, because it's a huge topic and it's something that's necessary. We escape it, but if we really think about restarting and we're reimagining how Liberia should be decentralized,
and that's one of those shows where I would encourage us to bring some of these political science guys in.
Right.
And let's hear what their thoughts are. Because this is essentially their area. Okay. We are just talking about the technical aspects of it.
Right.
Okay. So maybe you can challenge some of them to say, you know, how would you do this?
What are the thoughts on decentralization?
And we can have these discussions and let's see what their thoughts are.
I know one of the Near brothers were working over there. I know Henrik Wilson was working over there. So I will see who we can invite to participate with us on decentralization. Yeah, Olu, that your man George Famula, is it Olu voting you?
What Olu
is it the fame George? Oh, he said Georgia instead of George. He meant voting you.
Man, let Olu go sit down, man. Olu, man.
All right. Hey, Olu, call me. Olu, call me. All right, folks. We want to say thank you. It's been a wonderful hour. We'll be checking with you next week. Share this information about this kind of show. Like somebody says, a little different from what you're used to hearing. We're really here to see how we can talk about Liberia, how we can move the country forward. Yes, we'll bring in the news sometime. We'll bring in some political stuff as is necessary, but the focus will be enlightening and educating and seeing how we can really turn things around, how we can change mindsets about some of the things we do, you know, because who knows, whoever listening could have the opportunity at some point to be in government or to be in a position of authority. And if some of these things resonate with that person, it could lead to some change in our country. So thank you, and we'll see you next week.
All right, I'll take you.